This video is about the basics of permissions in Stacker. Permissions allow you to control what your users can and can't see, as well as what they can interact with. They're one of the most powerful features of Stacker, but they're also quite fiddly to set up. So the best thing to do, as I'll show you in this video, is to create your permission rules, but then also test them out a lot to make sure that they're working as you'd hope. Let's take a look. Before we get started setting up permissions for our app, I want to show you how I've already linked my user table to my projects table. And this is going to come in handy later on when we want to set up permissions for our projects. But to get started setting up permissions, if you go to App Settings and then Permissions, you'll be greeted with this table. Here you can see our users, projects, and companies tables and the permissions that are set up for them by default. So right now our users can read, update, and create for all of these tables, but they can't delete anything. Let's change that for the companies table. We click on the Edit button here. And first I want to highlight that you can change it so users can delete records here if you'd like to. But I'm going to change it so they can't create new companies and they can't update the company name or description. And I click Save and go back to my app. And now if I preview as a user and click on one of these companies, if I try to edit that company, you can see that I can't edit the company name or the description. Whereas if I hadn't changed those settings, I would be able to change those. Now, let's look at setting up permissions for our projects. And what I want to do this time is set it up so our users can only access a project if they are linked to it via the table we showed earlier. So this time, I'm going to click on Edit for our projects, and I'm going to only allow users to access some records. And I'm going to set it up so they can only access the project if the record, in this case the project, matches the user's linked fields that we created. Again, if I save and come out of here, I can now preview as a user, and you can see that for each user, they can only view the projects that they've been linked to in the data grid. And lastly, I want to set it up so users can see all of their colleagues' profiles, but they can only edit their own. So this time I'm going to edit the user table in permissions, and I'm going to create two tiers of permissions. Firstly, I'm going to create one called users read all profiles. And I'm going to set it so users can't create or update all records in the user table. And now I'm going to create a second set of permissions that only applies to the user's own profile. So I'm going to call this one users edit own profile. And here we're going to give the ability for them to update their profile. So it's only going to apply to some records, and it's only going to apply when the record that we're looking at matches the current user's user profile. So now let's test to make sure this is actually working. Let's save and go back to our app. And we want to preview as a specific user. So let's preview it as John here. Now if I click on John's profile, you can see that John has the ability to edit his own profile, as you would hope. But if we now view someone else, say Amy, then the edit button has disappeared, which is what we are hoping would happen. That's the basics of permissions. Join us in the next video where we'll be looking at some more advanced techniques.